For the first time in nearly a year and a half, Canada is open to international travelers who are fully immunized against COVID-19. They can also skip the 14-day quarantine, but there are conditions. Travelers must be fully vaccinated and they must show that they tested negative for COVID within 3 days of arrival. For more on this, our Chase team has reached Denis Vinette in Ottawa. He is the Vice President of the Travelers Branch of the Canada Border Services Agency. Welcome to you, Denis. Let's get right to it. The airports, you must be on the phone all day finding out how things are going. What are you hearing?
Yeah, we've been verifying with all of our operations across the country since 12/01 when the measures took effect. What are we seeing in terms of volumes? As you stated, it's been a long time coming. I think people were welcoming the ability to return to Canada as vaccinated travelers. And right now, it's working well. And we've got all our eyes right now on this afternoon's peak period in the airports. Our land border has worked really, really well. But we know that there's been some challenges in airports as these new measures do take a bit more time for people to cross the border.
Speaking of that, how much more time? Should you give yourself an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours even to go through that program, that process of screening?
Well, I think the key is for folks to know what are the requirements, arrive fully prepared, have all of your documents in hand, and that really provides greater fluidity in our operations. But in airports, we have seen wait times as recently as this past weekend of 60 minutes, sometimes 90 minutes. And we've been working with the airlines and the airport authorities to try and bring as much fluidity, if you will, and capacity at the airports. But folks should really plan to be ready and a lot extra time for their passage through our operations, both in land and in air.
You mentioned those documents. What do they need?
Yeah, important for you to have been, for the changes that came into effect today, your certificates demonstrating that you're fully vaccinated, having your pre-arrival molecular test as well, and having submitted your information in ArriveCan. That, with your passport on arrival, really facilitates things and takes away from what we term fumble time, if you will, where folks are going into purses and what have you to try and retrieve those documents. So have them in hand, have them ready to present to the officer, and that creates additional capacity and just more fluidity in all of the operations. Therefore, more people get to go through in a faster stream.
Denis, do you pick people at random to be tested as well?
Yeah, so we work with the Public Health Agency of Canada. So I think first, it's important for everybody to know, if you're unvaccinated and you're crossing the border, you're being tested, unless you're exempted, and that typically is those in the commercial stream, the essential workers. But everyone else will be tested. For those who are fully vaccinated, we have a surveillance program that's been put in place by Health Canada and the Public Health Agency, and you may be selected at random to be tested, and therefore that informs what are we seeing in this vaccinated population. Happy to report that from the onset, the number of individuals testing positive has been extremely, extremely low, less than 0.2% of all those travelers having been tested.
Mm-hmm. Now, airlines are doing their own checking, so I suppose that's one step they have to go through. So when they get to the airport, maybe that's one less thing you have to worry about. But at land borders, how are your CBSA colleagues and people that you work with dealing with those who may not have the right vaccines? Canada has approved 4 of them, we know, Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and the single-dose Johnson. So what happens if you don't have one of those?
Well, if you don't have the right vaccine, regrettably, then we have to assess whether or not you have a right of entry to the country. So if you're a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, for sure you'll be granted entry. But you'll have measures that apply, such as quarantine is still a measure that is applying at the border. So you're not exempted from that requirement. But if you're a foreign national looking to come into the country, you're not vaccinated, and you're coming for pleasure, tourism, to see friends or what have you, regretfully, we're going to have to send you back. And you're going to have to go back and wait for potentially a future phase. But if you are fully vaccinated, one of the 4 vaccines, you're more than welcome to present yourself, having met all of the prerequisites, and you will be admitted. And as you stated earlier, no need to quarantine. You can attend to family. You can visit, different places in Canada, and really avail yourself, if you will, of an open border.
So those people who don't have the right to, creds, if you will, cannot be given a random test and then allowed into the country. But I do have one question for you about those random tests. We opened the border to Americans on August 9th, and there have been random tests, done at those land border crossings. What's the positivity rate, Denis? I'm wondering what we can prepare ourselves for with, this new rule today of opening to international travelers.
Yeah, maybe a couple of key numbers. 65% of individuals crossing the border today are Canadians or permanent residents. And so already we're working with a much smaller subset of those crossing. What we have found in the surveillance program and the testing of those since we've opened the border on August 9th is that 0.2% of those who are fully vaccinated have tested positive. That does invoke and entail a requirement for the Public Health Agency working with local municipalities to then inform and the individuals who've crossed the border of the positivity rates or the positive tests, if you will. So there is, if you will, a process that continues on beyond the process, but it's been extremely, extremely low, which has informed the decision to continue to open the border for fully vaccinated travelers as we do today.
Final question for you. Biggest concern? This is a big day for many international travelers. A couple of countries, India, Morocco, can't come into Canada, from those countries. But what are your concerns?
Yeah, maybe just to make sure it's well understood. Individuals from India and Morocco can come to Canada. They just can't fly directly, and they'll need a test from a third country. But our biggest concern, and the one we've been working with industry on, is making sure that we've got the education, the awareness, the understanding of what those requirements are. Last thing you want is a family of 5 arriving at an airport, missing some tests or what have you, not being able to take their plane and their onwards travel to Canada. So we're really doubling down on making sure people are fully informed, understand, seek out any additional information before they travel so that they're completely compliant by the time that they make their decision to approach the border, be it at the land border or to board a plane. And therefore, it's a much more enjoyable experience. So education, I think, is really the key here.
I want to thank you for your time. I hope you have a smooth day on this border opening. Thank you, Denis.
Thank you, Suhana.